How's it going? So, I met a mate on the beach this morning, and I can't leave these monitors on. What's wrong with this? Yeah, met a mate on the beach this morning. I said, hey, I'm doing this thing, this podcasting thing. Come on down. He doesn't know what I was talking about. He doesn't know anything about podcasting, and nor do most people I know. So I've asked him to come in. He's actually going to bring a couple of guitars in, and we're just going to mess around for 45 minutes, half an hour, and I'm going to introduce him to the world of podcasting. He's been around the world doing corporate training. He's got a lot of good stories. He has shaped surfboards for years with some of the big names on the Gold Coast, and he wants me to call him the name I call him, because he has that George Clooney kind of appearance. Introducing the Cloon. And how's it going? Cloon, how are you, mate?
I'm very good, mate. And yourself?
Good. I dragged you off the beach this morning down at Chugan Beach. What were you doing down there? I didn't know.
I was just getting a bit of exercise, morning walk, enjoying the early day.
I'll be honest, I've seen you there before, but I don't know. How far do you walk? I always go to that Pelican Sands thing. I've got into running from the boxing thing I was doing. I never ran before in my life. I hate it. So now I run up to there and do 25 push-ups once I get there, like an idiot. Like one of those idiots. You know those idiots you see?
On the beach.
There's nothing worse than watching some guy sort of from a distance rooting the sand. You know?
Unless you're that way inclined.
I know that. I know it's weird, but that's what I've got to do. How far do you walk?
Generally, mate, I walk down to, from Chugan there down to North Kira Surf Club, and turn around and come back there. So it's a bit of a trot.
North Kira?
So I sort of Googled it, and I think it's around the 9k mark there and back. But it's a pleasant way to get exercise. It's a bit of a surfing replacement, really. Yeah. You know, sort of. I come back, and if there's little waves, I go out and have a paddle for a little while, which doesn't, wreck the shoulders too much. So it's just an enjoyable way. It's exercising without realising you're doing it.
Where did you first learn to surf?
Sydney.
Sydney. What was the first wave? Okay.
Cronulla was the first place I ever went surfing on a fiberglass board.
Well, tell me about that. What happened? I mean, I remember the first feeling. I actually thought, I'm going pro. Like, I stood up, didn't it? I'm sure everyone does. Or just that. Wow, this. I understand it. And I didn't surf for another 10 years after that. But I always considered myself a surfer, like a kook.
Okay.
Tell me about yours. What happened?
Well, mate, I remember I'd finished primary school and got a surfboard in the school holidays. And I'd had foamies since I was a little kid. Dad used to take me down to places like Coogee and what have you, and he'd muck around in the foamy. Now suddenly I had a 6'7" McGregor bright yellow pintail. I thought I was it. So down to Cronulla we went. Out I went. Found that the fiberglass board was a lot harder to handle than a foamy, of course.
What year would this win? Puberty blues?
I don't know, mate. Definitely puberty blues era. Thanks for exposing my old age there, Drew.
We're all old.
But,
really, what year would you think?
Well, I started high school in 75, so this would have been December of 74.
Excellent. And
then within a short time I progressed to a 6'4" McCoy roundtail, which I loved. I had a Shane Channel bottom.
Yeah. Were they with single fin, 74?
Yeah, single fins, yeah. Thruster came in early 80s. 81, I think Simon Anderson did it, but took your ordinary mere mortal surfer a while to catch on.
Really?
Your pros and what have you were into thrusters pretty quick, but a lot of recreational surfers took their time. Still surfing singles and 20s and that sort of thing.
So, 6 foot, what'd you say, 6'8"?
6'7".
6'7". That would have been a big board for a kid.
Oh, yeah, extremely. But that was also the mindset back then.
Right.
Was,
big guns.
Bigger boards were what was expected.
So no big turns. Just, I saw this. It's been on Fox a lot. I wish I could think of what it was called now. I watched every episode, though. the different styles in actual surfing, the different body shapes. It was, they showed. Remember in the 50s, guys would get really sort of gymnastical and run up and down the board. And looking back now, it looks beautiful, if you want to say the word beautiful, but it's so weird now.
It's a totally different. It wasn't performance surfing. It was more like a arty sort of display.
Yeah, really.
In many respects.
You know, it's funny how things change.
But the individual aspect of surfing, I think, is as boards dropped in size, and you had those sort of first surfers in the first, when the Pro Tour in the mid-70s really took off, your Rabbit, your Terry Fitzgerald, Sean Thompson, all those sort of guys. They had quite an individual style about them. And as time progressed and the thruster came in, the surfing style, while performance has improved to an incredible level, the style has become somewhat homogenised compared, I think, to the 70s. The individual aspects of certain surfers stood out much more, and people were proud of their individual styles in a way. I think that might be a little different to now. Everyone's sort of after that same.
Yeah, what's the manoeuvre now?
Manoeuvre. So.
Yeah.
But I mean, having said that, you look at someone like Joel, Parkinson, Mick Fanning. They surf in individual ways. They're hardly what you'd call cookie cutter. Incredible surfers. I mean, the standard that's been attained is really something that back in the 70s, if someone did a 360, it was a big deal. Now a grommet pops a 360 in the short break on his backhand, doesn't even think about it.
Little maggots. Isn't that crazy, mate? We were talking on the beach this morning about technology and how fast things have progressed. And what I didn't say this morning is that on watching, I've got a little 4-year-old boy, so I've been showing. He just got a board, little bike from Santa at Christmas, and I went, we'll get on YouTube and we'll see what other 4-year-old kids are doing on BMX bikes, mate.
Oh yeah.
It made me realise, but there's kids dropping into bowls like proper half-pipe bowls everywhere that are 3-year-olds even, without even pedals, just dropping in. But it made me realise that it's a combination of a couple of things. Like when we were kids, we didn't have skate parks. We just got a BMX track in my local area. So BMX riding in the 78, early 80s, it was just took off in Brisbane suburbs. Right, so that was great. So all we could do were a couple of tricks. People were just trying to make the table, jump over the tabletop and do the whoops. And then there were a couple of jumps like the cross up. They were basically these couple of jumps. If you think about it now, even with the GoPro, even the fact that we can watch and rewind video, or like all these little kids on these videos were showing back videos. So they'd do a trick and then go over to their little 7-year-old mate, and he'd rewind the iPhone thing. So you think of how quickly the actual trick progresses on that day alone, just by seeing what other kids are doing worldwide on their little iPhones right there. Like, the speed of everything. So watching those little kids and doing their tricks now. Before, say, in Cronulla, it would have been trying to be better than that, or not even trying to be better, just trying to surf as good as the best guy on the break on that day, and that was your entire world. Wasn't it?
Right. Yeah,
the entire world was right there. You didn't know anything. Even TV hadn't these grainy images of things that were happening overseas didn't make an impact. It was what was in your complete circle. Yeah,
well, that's the sort of the modern digital world with its information, overload that it's getting to. Has changed things incredibly since that era, obviously. But kids today have access to so much more information and knowledge. One of my mates I bumped into this morning was referring to his 10-year-old son knowing so much more about the world than he did at 10 years of age, purely because of the technology that exposes him to, all this information. It's amazing. So,
imagine that. Yeah, but could you imagine that, being a kid and your parents saying, "No, this is how it is. I know."
Yeah, well,
not anymore.
Yeah, no. I think one thing as you get a bit older, it's hard to put your head back to where you were and realise how different it actually is compared to the current, situation. Even just to be a 30-year-old now as opposed to a 30-year-old 20 years ago. You're not aware of the difference because it's creeping up on you. But when you look at it, It's a vastly different
Yeah.
world in terms of what's accessible.
You know, when I was a kid, all through my home life, we had these big encyclopedias at home. Like, you know, some families had these big. I just love the smell, mate. They were so old. I'm pretty sure they're still at Mum and Dad's house, but I would love to go back now. And because I read these things like comic books, you know, after you ran out of someone gave me a whole pile of Mad magazines once, but in between Mad magazines, I had about 3 BMX magazines. You know, we just didn't get into that stuff in my house, but I had these encyclopedias, and I'd flick them open all the time. I would love to see them right now and just see how wrong they are.
Well, yeah. Well, that's so much of what was considered scientific fact, say, or what was considered educational material since we were kids, has been proved wrong, and so much of history has had to be rethought by archaeologists with improvement in technology and what they've discovered in just the last 10 years alone. They've had to rethink various aspects of world history and what man has been capable of and doing for a long time. So
I was just reading on Graham Hancock's Facebook page. Graham Hancock is I want to say an archaeologist. I think he calls himself a writer, but he's anyway. Graham Hancock. His story today was that they found some iron in one of the Great Pyramid at Giza, near one of the southern exits, and they've had this thing for 20 years, and the article today was that they think it's about 4,500 years old. Iron, actual, somewhere along the lines we learnt how to make iron years ago, and it's been lost, and because it's a different style. Like, it's actually not the style. It's a really basic, primitive way of making iron, and it's been dated to be 4,500 years old. I'm going to get my coffee. Okay. So imagine the encyclopedia at the time I was reading this in 1978.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
all the crap that would be in that. I remember looking at pictures of dinosaurs. They'd all be wrong. Think about it.
Oh, there's a
daily wrong. Like, you could be right today, but tomorrow they'll find something new. Well, spread around the world. Imagine they'd have to reprint the whole encyclopedia every day.
Well, there was a German. I don't know if she was an archaeologist or what the lady actually is, but she works in a museum in Germany, and she had the idea of testing one of the mummies, a 3,000-year-old mummy. And she took some samples and sent them off for testing, got them back, looked at them and thought, this can't be right. So she took more samples and sent them off to 3 different laboratories, and the samples came back all the same. The mummy had tested positive to nicotine and cocaine. So she then tested more mummies in the museum and found around a third of them tested positive to nicotine and cocaine. And this is ancient Egypt. Both nicotine and cocaine are considered products of the New World that supposedly weren't in the ancient world or didn't appear until the Columbian Exchange took place later. So that turns things on its head right there. So
it also sounds like a good cover story for her not being caught out. What's all this? The mummy? Funny story, hey?
Well, that's right, mate. It's all a scam.
Isn't that how Christianity was invented? One woman's exaggerated story about a one-night stand that just went completely out of...
Careful.
It was God? Just... There were 3 wise... Seriously, no, they came along in the middle of the night. One had some frankincense, and the other guy, he was a good-looking guy.
One had the coke.
Yes. Hey, 3 wise men knocked on her door at night. Oh, no, that was... yes, let's not go down this path.
No, I wouldn't, mate. There's, there's people out there who...
Tell me about... we know each other through training. We won't have to say the company name, but through corporate training in team building. Really interesting stuff. You've done it for years, and you've travelled worldwide doing that. But I really like your stories when you tell me about shaping surfboards. and especially locally on the coast, because we've got you must think it's funny, but when you see Currumbin Creek and the amount of